Racism. What is racism? Yes, you and I have had discussion within ourselves, with the environment around, and the people around us, and having an issue with racism. The world needs to understand how you feel and how your feelings affect the environment around you and how reactions of others through racism. So that's my topic for today, and I'm going to share with you on this story, sharing our stories the way it is. What is racism? Let's understand what is racism. So, as a matter of fact, I decided maybe we are misunderstanding the word racism. Let's go and check it on the Google, on the Wikipedia, or just a simple statement, because it can be quite large. So when I went to the Google, I checked on it to make sure that it's the simplest way that everybody can understand. It says, the belief that all members of each race possesses characteristics, abilities, or qualities specific to that race, especially so as to distinguish it as inferior or superior to another race or races. This is a very generalized statement, but I think it makes some few points where I'm coming from. One race feeling superior of the other one. There are a form of racism around. It can also happen within a country on its own, back in African home, which we all think of sort of like it's a tribalism. And the topic I want to deal with today is about the racism between the Black community and the white community. Just to be clear, especially outside the continent of Africa. This means I'm going to talk about my experience and sharing my stories with you. Black life matters. White life matters as well. Actually, everyone's life matters on this world. But the topic we are having right now globally is about the Black life matters. And it's also related to racism. Very, very important. It's about a conflict of two races, the white race and the Black race. So I'm going to give you my experiences through that. As you all know, as African, we have been oppressed for over 400 years. That's a lot of generations and time. That's this time we have been given the attention. Let people listen to our story so that they understand where you and I are coming from. So let's start having time to speak up, share our stories. And that's what I'm going to do with you today with my experience of racism. I've actually tried to put this in a way that all of you can understand it. And I'm talking about not only the white community. I also want the people back at home in Africa to understand what is racism, because that's how I also got to know about racism when you're outside the continent, about between the Black and the white. So I've put this into around 4 questions that I'm going to go through with you. The first question will be, when did you learn about racism? When did I learn about racism? Well, this is a really interesting story and a true story about me. When I learned about racism, yes, I didn't know about racism when I back home. Oh, put it this way, I didn't know how Black I was in back at home. Everybody's Black. So there was no time of fighting racism between the Black and the white, because the community was full of Black of us, and we never had this issue of Black and white racism. So I had no idea. Yes, I watched TVs and I watched the Americans, the shootings and all those videos you watch, which for us, we thought they were videos, right? Movies, not reality. But it hit me hard when I came to Europe. Yes, That's when I got to know about racism, when I landed in the continent, and this time was in Germany. My experience is a very interesting one, and I'm going to share with you about it as we go on with the next. Now, the next question is quite interesting. How did you know someone was racist to you? How did you know? Well, how did I get to know? I didn't even need to look for it. I actually got involved in it straight on my face about racism, just landing already in the country of Germany. And how I realized it, because I noticed something was not correct, right? You have that feeling of knowing what is going on here. Why is it only me when you have so many of you and not the others? And you get really direct comments sometimes. You're told that go back home, or you get some situations where we're put in a position where you don't know how to react. And for me, how I knew that it was not, because I was not comfortable. Something was not right. I felt insecure. It's human to feel insecure when you're in between people and they're discussing about something that you feel not comfortable. For example, I'll give you an example. In my situation, my true story is when I was going I was lived in a community where it was literally only Germans, okay, white Germans, and there were no blacks, so probably it was just me and somebody else that I didn't know about. So the community was not really used to it. So I was thinking, struggling, was this racist, or was it just because I am new in the community and they didn't know me? And I experienced it very hard when my son started going to schools, and I'm gonna give you that example later. But some of them, they're just simple things that people just generalize you, not knowing where you're coming from. So if you would go to, for example, to a bakery. Bakeries are very common in Germany, right? And sometimes they're just queuing in the line like everybody else, and then somebody from nowhere just comes and crosses the line and goes like you were not there, like you're just transparent, and you're like, hello, I'm in the queue here, why are you jumping my queue? And they would not do it to anybody else, because they would just jump you, not you, and just ignore that you're there. And I think this is something that people should be really aware of their behaviors that comes across. And that's just as a mild example. I'm not gonna go very deep with this, but how I felt around that side, I felt injustice. I mean, I didn't feel correct. Of course, there are so many bullies around, but when it happens so often, you tend to think like, what is going on? So whenever you left the house, you didn't know what's gonna happen. So for me, it was definitely how I felt not comfortable, because something was not right. And don't forget, when you're in a community of white people, you don't see another black person. So I don't think I go with a mirror looking at myself, oh, I'm black. No, at some point you would even see a black person and you go like, oops, is that how I look? Because it takes you forever to see another black person, and we have this sisterhood around the community where we call each other sisters and brothers. When we don't, it's a communication language within ourselves. We go, hi sister, hi brother, it's, and not all countries. So this is just Germany. So don't take this to somewhere else, because it's gonna go disaster. So racism is also something that between the black and the white, because that's where I want to concentrate on. And it's mild, it's very small thing, but it makes you cooked up and you realize something is not right. Or you go to a restaurant and you're queuing. I mean, every restaurant here in Germany, you have to be seated, and then you go to the line and you go to, oh, the place is full. And yet you can see some spaces there and there and there. And for me, as usual, I said, what do you mean? I can see open spaces there and there. And sometimes, because I know it's not, I would really want to prove that this guy I would have wished that this guy was not racist, didn't want me to get into that restaurant. So you would go to the side and wait and see what happens if somebody else comes in. Are they gonna get them seated? And someone like me, I would see that they've seated somebody, and I would come back and challenge, how come this person got a seat and hours before? And these are small things that you acknowledge. It's done almost most of the places, but not everywhere. But you get this as well on the taxi. Maybe you book a taxi, you want to get into a taxi, and the guy tells you, I can't take you, I'm gonna take somebody else. It doesn't happen to me, but I know it's happened to some of the people. So that's the feeling you get. That's the time you know that something is not right. But if you haven't gone through it, you would not know whether is it racism. Maybe they don't know me, maybe sometimes it's always good to have these second thoughts, because it helps you to cover the story up, because that's what I do most of the time. I've realized you cannot, which I'm going to go to the next step, how I deal with it as well. So the third question that you would be interested in knowing as white people, the people on the continent, is which was your worst experience with racism? That's a good one. Yes, my worst definitely has to be the one that had involved my own children, because that's where it hurts most. Yes, my son was discriminated in the kindergarten. I mean, little thing, young boy just starting to get to know life. And maybe I have to give you more background about me. I am in a mixed marriage. I was in a mixed marriage, and father of my children is German, and I came here through marriage. And for me, my children are always two. So as you see the zebra behind us, my favorite animal is to do with, I'm on both sides. I love both sides, because I'm neither here nor there, and so are my children. And so bringing my son to German school, for me, him having German, definitely would think that should reduce the racism or anything, but this is so wrong. It went really wrong, that we had to make big changes. My son was discriminated in the kindergarten, and fortunately he can't remember much of that. Thanks God, when I tried to remind him, I was so happy that he did, because he was enjoying to go to school. He was very young age, he didn't see what was happening, and he was being put aside, put in a box because he had a lot of energy or whatever. But this was not true, and he was put marks that he has ADHD and all these syndromes that they were never noticed at home, but only in the kindergarten, just to realize that this teacher was a very racist. And we were just one of the so many children that this teacher in the kindergarten we got ourselves into, because she had a history of just being racist with anyone who was not German in that kindergarten. Thanks God we moved our son from that environment, and we got ourselves we had even have to change, we had to move just because of that, to make sure our children had a better lifestyle. We moved from one city to another city, where we felt the child was more accepted and easily to develop to be what he is. And what a change. Oh my God. All those symptoms that they were saying, they were never noticed. And that was the biggest racism that I've ever felt, that really got me into my heart, really like, no, not my children, no. Well, now we go to the fourth questions, which is the quite toughest one here of all the three, of all the four questions, and is how did you deal with racism when it happened? Wow, well, how did I deal with it? Very, very, very interesting question. Well, how I dealt with it, I first of all recognized that it is there. It is there, as I told you. Every day when you wake up, you don't know what is going to wait for you outside. really don't know whether you're gonna be there. So I actually went out, and initially I was the kind of person who was really taking it in at the spot, and sometimes it's very hard to explain to somebody when a racism happens, and you lose the words, the exact feeling. You cannot show the feeling, how you're feeling about it. So I used to take it at home to my partner then, and it used to be a big issue because, first of all, my language was not so good, so I could, maybe they meant something else and I had something else, so it was a mixture of everything. But it's really, I felt something that was not okay, right? So I used to carry this information, so I learned how to deal with it. So I learned I decided to really deal with it at the spot if I could. Also talk to myself even if I didn't talk to the other person. So whenever it happened, I had prepared myself with good words, and I had prepared myself to be calm as well, and to tell the person that because some of these racist people, when you confront them, they are really shy about it. Some of them, they really recognize it, and they really need to know that they did it. So it's important you tell them onto their face, what did you just say? Yes, ask the people when they may do something. So I realized the best way to deal with it was dealing at the spot and making the person aware about the situation, how they have just put you on, and putting a name on it, that it is racism, what the person had just done, and make it loud that everybody just get their attention and knows that. Although the environment doesn't really care so much here in Germany, that's my assumption, but I can see through the past demonstration that we had after George Floyd was murdered in the US, and demonstration going around the world, and now I'm hoping that people are aware. So when you speak it up, people will be aware of what you're talking about, because it is mentally, physically damaging, especially the mental part is quite discouraging. It pulls you quite down and feeling inferior, which is not one. So for me, I learned how to deal with it on the spot. That's so important. And I started checking, which areas do I get it most? Where do I experience it the most? And avoid those areas. Yeah, really avoid them. Just put them not in my list. I'm sorry to say that, but for me, I notice public transport are not for me. I mean, that's where you are on the spot, you're in the train, you're in the bus, and somebody starts racism on you. It can go until you reach where you are, and it's mentally sickening, and because nobody's gonna react to it. So for me, I decided not to try to minimize using the public means, because I also had a racism there one time. I went to train, and there were a lot of people coming out from football and were having a good laugh and whatever, drunk. You never know the situation where you find yourself in. And there were these guys taking photos with me and making funny jokes, and they have their own jokes they have that you don't even get what they're saying. And I had to sit there like a fool and be photoed on. But when I left, and then I knew I was coming out from the trade. I left a message and left quickly, but you have to consider the situation where you are. These are footballers, and many of them, you can put yourself into big troubles. So I just avoid that. So I drive a lot. Wherever I can, I drive. And I'm also very careful that my kids don't use so much public transport. So they got the best bikes ever, so that they can go to school with, or I can drop them. But that doesn't really stop them facing the racism, but just reducing the risk of putting yourself into positions that you don't want to be in, okay? This could be also the public events. Some of the public events, they're horrible. If there's a concert going on, you might find yourself the only one, everybody around you just disappearing, and you're just the only one in the middle of a concert, and you wonder, oh, what happened? Everybody's just whoosh, like a big space around you. Or somebody just shouting just next to you. They have this tendency of communicating when they see you black. That's what I notice. You find them screaming, shouting, oh, 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 instead to you, and then another one on another corner. I don't know what they're communicating with, but I tend to find this quite often happening whenever you go to big concerts or entertainment. So I just avoid them. I just go to places that I feel comfortable in, and I have to say I have very good also friends. The German friends are very well integrated, so I'm going with the people I know, because I also go with the local people, so that people are aware that I'm not just staying with the African community. Something else I also learned to also mingle with the community, see what they're doing in their culture, getting to know about their culture, so that you're aware when you can defend yourself. So you're getting myself informed of what is happening around, so even if there's a conversation happening, you can also contribute to the conversation, because that's something else that can happen when you're having conversations between three people and you're the only black. You might find the communication you're not in it, you're just being passed, like you're not there, communication, or even the topic is just around you and people are not involving you in the topics, which is a little bit annoying. And so getting yourself more involved, learning the language so that you can take part with the communication as well, and just being you. Sometimes people, you find them overdoing it because they just want to impress other cultures. That's just not me. I just stay me. That's how I've learned how to deal with the racism there. And another thing that is very important is that you need to build up your confidence, your mindset. I mean, some people, when you come here in Europe, you keep having this mindset that white people are superior, or they think better than you, and you have this mentality they're good, or they're just human beings like you. So put your confidence the same level. Put your head up, walk straight on the street, go to the counter, talk to the person in the counter, tell them what you want, very confident. A confident phrase always win, and has always won for me. If I'm going somewhere, I have to build that confidence to get what I want at the counter, to survive. I've been here in Europe now almost 20 years, and I've had the worst time, but that was very short time once I figured it out, how to deal with it. And now I can see I don't have it, I don't see it, and I've used different mechanism which already I had it in Africa, where we don't look at people into the eye, so I don't need to see people, because when I look at somebody, I see all this hatred on their faces and their angerness, and some people have had a bad day in the day. You don't want to be involved with that. So I avoid looking people into the eye when I'm walking in the street. I just mind my own business, all right? It might sound a very sad life, but it saved me a lot of hassle, a lot of problems, and I'm very peace with myself, I tell you. So these are the 5 tips I wanted to share with you. As I told you before, the first one, when did you learn about racism? The second one, how did you know someone was racist to you? Which is your worst racism experience that I've had? There are many, but I just chose one because I told you this can be quite crazy. How do you deal with racism when it happens? That's something else, number 5. And I have elaborated you quite wide. So yes, thank you so much, and I hope you get something from this lesson from my own sharing. It's all about life. Black life matters, and everybody's life matters, and stop racism, especially between the black and the white, whichever way it happens, whether in the continent, whether the African people are racist to the white people, it should stop. But I am more on the other side right now. That's why I'm explaining to you to understand what is racism and understand how you can react to it and how people have done it. And the whole throughout, you have to deal with it. Professionalism always win, definitely. When you're a professional in your work, especially at work, you will win. As definitely stay calm, show your professionality, the person will respect you, right? And also be very, very educate yourself how things work around wherever you are in the country, and how you can take part in everything like that. So thank you, and I hope my video was quite interesting. And if you like my topic of today, please subscribe, and Looking forward to the next video, and check out other videos that I've shared as well. And I hope you can also learn a little bit from racism in Europe.